as nonprofits, we have a lot to learn from the social justice movements of the past year that I think took not only Israel and not only the Middle East, but also the world by storm and by surprise, from the Arab Spring to hundreds of thousands of Israelis coming out to the streets and basically saying, we're pissed and we want you to do something about it. And we're going to do something about it. So I think as nonprofits, we have a lot to learn from what makes people get up, and whether it's a mom who just doesn't buy cottage cheese, to people who pitch a tent. You know, they make their duplexes and their tents on Rothschild. So I brought together some rather amazing people to help me discuss this idea, what nonprofits can learn from these social justice movements. And I'm going to allow each of them a minute or two to introduce themselves. And I hope that you will enjoy this as much as I know I'm going to.
Hi, I'm Sarah Nadav, and I write for the Jerusalem Post. Over the summer, I wrote a few articles about the tent protests. I attended a lot of them. I set up a tent. I had secret meetings in cafes on Rothschild that I was a party to, and I feel like I got a very unique perspective on Israeli culture and also on what made this social justice movement so powerful and compelling for people.
I'm Dvorah Kalekin-Fishman. I'm a sociologist, and my connection is trying to theorize the successes and the failures of the demonstration, which was very impressive and made people very enthusiastic, including me, last summer.
I'm Barak Cohen, and I'm a criminal lawyer, and my connection is that I defended and still defend all the people who protest and act against the state of Israel.
I'm Oren Pasternak, and before I'll introduce myself, I will say that talking about the protest and the demonstration as something that passed away from the world is not. It's not true. It's a mistake. Sorry for my rusty English. I'm a political social activist, 27 years old, student for law and business, and just finished. I just withdrew from the army after serving for 5 years as an officer in the Armored Corps, and was in the student union a little bit, but was part of the still. So you see, it's my mistake also. I'm still part of the social justice movement, which is all around Israel. Working right now with Daphne and some other guys who probably heard about Daphne Live. That's it. My background, how to connect to the protest is I came to the tents in Rothschild in the third day, just asked what can I help, and I brought 6 bottles of water, and from then just continued to help organize the protests, the demonstrations and stuff. Of course, with all the logistics, the media things, the messages, and that's it. Later I will respond to if it's true, if we really succeeded making the masses go out the streets, if it wasn't just מופע זמני. Let's say that if we really managed to use all our power, or we didn't, because I think that we even didn't use less than 10% of our power. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nachman Rosenberg. Apparently I'm the only panelist who was not involved in the tent movement. So I just want to clarify that I would like to buy a cheap home as well. That's my only official affiliation. Aside from that, I'm the vice president of the Tzor organization. A few months ago, Tzor is involved in the Jewish identity of the state of Israel. We assist thousands upon thousands of secular couples get married in accordance with Jewish tradition, couples who choose to do so. A few months ago, Tzor was under a certain type of political attack from the Ministry of Religious Affairs, who tried to prevent Tzor from continuing its services, and we launched a very targeted social campaign, which was quite successful. And
more on that later.
We're here to talk about that.
Sure. I would like this to be a very open discussion, and the only reason I'm not sitting is because I have to deal with the slides. And my belief is that when you get people of different opinions together, you come up with a great conversation, and you can see that we have different people, different opinions. So As you can see on the screen, basically what came out of this, people felt that Israelis understood that when they get up and make their voices heard, they can make a change. And in fact, when we talk about cottage cheese briefly, it was one person. And how many of you even know his name? How many of you even know the name of the person that started the cottage cheese boycott? One. Okay. Two. Because it's not about him, right? It wasn't about him. It's all about us and Israeli society. And I'd like to discuss what makes people identify with a cause, since we all work with causes, and how do we then call the right target to action? If he'd gotten up and said, let's, take a bath in cottage cheese or spill it on the streets, that would not have made a difference. But he spoke in a way that people could act, and I think I'd like to discuss that. Devorah, I'm going to address my first question to you. As a sociologist, how do we get people, whether it's the masses moving as 90% or 10%, how do we get people, what speaks to people, how do we get them to identify with a cause and to then take action for that cause?
Do you know how many sociologists it takes to change a light bulb? Nobody knows. None. Why? Because you have to change the system. And in that, sociologists are just like the people who demonstrated in the streets, right? I think that the demonstration was in order to change the system, but I also think that the ideas about how to do it had some things missing. There was talk about changing the budget, but there wasn't talk about changing policy from the very beginning. And actually what had to be changed in order to change the rules of the game, the idea behind it is to change the policy. Changing policy means attacking power. And I believe, together with many other sociologists, that there is not only one center of power, that is not only the state is a center of power, but there are many centers of power. That is the Knesset, the judicial system, the educational system, the industrial system, complexes, professional organizations, and so on. All of these have power. And the question is whether a demonstration of the kind, or the question that I'm asking myself is whether demonstrations of this kind can really help overcome the powers that are expressed by the various kinds of organizations, including the state. In the protest, which was a quasi-social movement, it became clear that different sectors of, now I'm answering your question. Thank you. Different sectors of the population are actually suffering from deprivation. But there were different kinds of deprivation that were being demonstrated in the streets. Actual demonstration of poverty was characteristic of the lower classes. And then there was relative deprivation of the middle classes. And there was an attempt to put all of this together into one pot, so to speak, and to make the demonstration speak for everybody.
I just want to say that actually what I saw out on the streets for the demonstrations of what made it unique was that people from the middle class were saying, we're going to stand up and identify with an issue that's not ours. This is a lower class issue, it doesn't even touch me, but we're going to stand up for it. People from the lower classes were standing together with people who might have had relative deprivation as opposed to a more desperate situation. But the truth is, and I feel like this speaks to why people go out in the streets, is it's incredibly hard to motivate a middle class community to go out and demonstrate for anything. It doesn't matter. And even though demonstrations seem like fun, and I heard this all the time, it's not actually fun. After maybe day one or day two, it gets exhausting. And for people who in the middle class to go out and to go out over and over and over again speaks to a real pain that people felt, and that and I think that's part of how you get people, is by touching them personally.
Yeah, after day one, it's not fun. You're right. I think after so many years of depression by the authorities and by the government, or by the things that we used to know or think that we live good, or of course, as you see many times, our government or many government doesn't have to be this specific government talking about graphs, We always talk about graphs and statistics and not about the people. And after so many years of this kind of things, of this separation, I don't know how to say the word, it's a good tactics for controlling the people. It's הפרד ומשול בעברית. And I think that the best thing to give people, you say what makes people go out and no, it's not something that you need to invent. It's the truth. Okay, what we saw that people like in the personal story of Daphne, when people ask me, when people ask Barak, when people ask others, it's just to talk. I saw here one of the companies have this brochure, the 10 commandments of how to make a viral video and etc. It's and the only one commandment I saw is really connected to our messages. Just talk, tell your story, and tell about your problems. I think that the media, the current media, which is controlled by people who have interest in something, which I can elaborate later, but don't want to see the real picture of Israel or the real picture of the society all around the world. Our movement is not something that was made today. Something global. You have it in Germany. You have it in England. You have it in Wall Street. So people want to hear the truth. It's not by incident that you say we are the 99%. Yes, we are the 99%, and we want to show each and everyone, if we'll have time. Not now, I'm talking generally. My dream and my things I'm going out all around Israel is to go and to talk with each person, child, and to tell them and to hear their stories and to connect between the stories. And the best thing to do it is of course the media, YouTube or something like this. But the best thing to do to put people out the street is just to tell them the truth. And I will. My last sentence is about what you said. When we made the appeal and we said to the Supreme Court about not evacuating the tents, and I was signed on it, and more people in the media ask us, yes, what are you doing? It's not your struggle. It's not your thing. It's not. So I asked, what do you mean it's not my thing? It's not my struggle. This is part of my society. This is part. There is no middle class, lower class, or something like that. It's only something that many years we are used to. We used to live as same as we used to live. In the feeling that there is demonstration, so everybody is going home, and the thing is finished. Not, it's a process.
Oren, I think you're touching on something very, very important, and something that we can turn to nonprofits. You're talking about a message that everyone can get behind, okay? And I think that is incredibly important to talk about. I think that in order to get as many people together as you can, your message needs to speak to as many people as possible, which means it needs to be very apolitical, okay? Because as soon as you're political, you lose. I mean, if I were to make a political statement, I would probably lose at least a quarter, if not a third or a half of this room. And even more so, and I know from my little...
The message is political. There is no such thing. That's what I believe, non-political.
Well, if people want housing, you can have 100 different types of ideologies on the stage. Everyone still wants housing. Everyone still wants to be able to afford cottage cheese, regardless of how they feel politically or religiously. So I think I have an example of a nonprofit that was incredibly savvy about how they went about telling their message, and I'm going to show. As a matter of fact, Barak was part of it. And we had, in one day, we had religious and Meretz and anarchists and Haredi. Everyone came together because they could all get behind a message. And I'm going to ask Nachman now just to talk for a minute while I set up this video about how he utilized, how Tzohar utilized their people, their audience to motivate and to make an actual change. Do you mind discussing that for a moment, please?
500,000 איש שיצאו לרחוב, אני בתור מתנגד לשלטון זה לא עושה עליי שום רושם. למה? משום שאף אחד לא דרש מהאנשים שבאו לרחוב שום דבר מלבד לבוא ולכאוב במשותף. ואתה מבקש מאנשים לבוא לכאוב במשותף, אז הם באים. זה מאפשר כשאתה לא דורש ממישהו לעשות פעולה, וכמו ששושנה אמרה, להתאחד סביב רעיון, אז אפשר להכיל את כולם. אבל כשרוצים לדבר על מסר שדורש מאנשים, מעשים, שדורש להקצות אנרגיות, לא לבוא רק להופעה ולחזור הביתה ולהסתפק בהתבשמות עצמית ולהגיד, מה, אני באתי להפגנה. לא. מאבק הוא מאבק ארוך שדורש הזדהות עם תכנים, ואני באופן אישי לא רוצה 500,000 איש, אני מעדיף 10,000 איש שיהיו מורדים אמיתיים, שביום יום יתאמצו להתנגד לשלטון באופן טוטלי, אני מעדיף את זה על 7 מיליון אנשים שיבואו ויעמדו ויחזרו הביתה אחרי 3 שעות.
I would like to try to make my answer relevant for nonprofits that are in the crowd, because I'm not sure if every nonprofit is involved in some agenda that is of social justice nature. So I want to try to describe the principles behind Tzohar's actions that may be applicable for some of us sitting in the crowd. 3 things I could think of is, number 1, not being surprised. Pirkei Avot says, Ezu Chacham Haroeh et Hanolad. Tzohar saw this coming. We knew that this was going to happen. Unfortunately, Tzohar's good work is not appreciated by all the elements, without getting into details in the political structure. So there were already warning signs that we were going to have a problem, and that different elements within the political scene were going to try to hinder Tzohar's work. Number 2 is set attainable goals. I feel like over the past 6 months, there have been a lot of social justice initiatives and battles. Sometimes it's hard to identify what exactly came out of it in the short term. We knew exactly what we wanted to happen. And finally, to use professionals. Some of the we knew what we wanted to accomplish, but we definitely used professionals to help us accomplish those goals. And I would like to just, with Shoshana's permission, say something that I think, a fundraising tip, which I think most people in the crowd probably don't mind hearing, something that connects between the two. As a person who's a nonprofit representative themselves, there's a few things that are more annoying than when people tell nonprofits, guys, you got to spend money to make money, because there is no money to spend. Or when people ask you, do you have any cash reserves? What does that mean? So when people tell you, you have to use professionals, you come to a conference like this and you see many different types of professionals. A lot of them seem like to have a lot of wonderful things to offer. And so what do I do now? How do I spend money? And just a tactic that I use in Tzohar, and which we used in this particular struggle, because some of these things are outside of the ordinary budget, operating budget, and require extra money, is instead of going to a donor and saying, number 1, when you're under attack, so it makes people, your supporters feel even more passionate about supporting your goals, people that believe in what you're doing, no matter what you're doing. Any PR is good PR, as long as they spell your name right, as they say. But more importantly, instead of going to a donor and saying, do you have 50,000 shekel, say, we want to, even if it has nothing to do with social justice, we want to set up a new website. We realize that we don't look well. Or wait for the opportunity if a donor says to you, hey, guys, your website looks really bad. Good point. As a matter of fact, we really would like to build a new website. It's going to cost us 35,000 shekel. Is there a chance you would be willing to sponsor that? We want to do we have this idea, we want to do a viral video. Find one of your supporters that's involved in a certain area that you want to invest in, and try to get them to invest in something specific. With regard to Tzohar, basically the Ministry of Religious Affairs, Tzohar operates currently as a kind of a bridge between the religious establishment and Jewish couples in Israel who wish to marry in accordance with halakha. Many of them, for whatever the reason may be, try to avoid engaging the rabbinate. Some of them avoid it completely and fly to Cyprus, Prague, Portugal, other places to avoid marrying in accordance with halakha. This has ramifications that some of them are not aware of their children not being able to be recognized as Jewish in the next generation, aside from Tzohar's overall objective of preserving and enhancing the Jewish identity of the State of Israel. We knew this was going to happen, and we engaged the media. Everyone was aware that this was going to happen, and when they finally decided to prevent Tzohar from performing marriages and they stopped sending us marriage licenses, we gave it over to the public. We said, we had a press conference that Tzohar is shutting down, and we hand this over to the media and to the Israeli public and to our constituents. Do something about it. And within 48 hours, there was an overwhelming response. Basically, the reporters were fighting over who would cover the story more. Facebook, Ynet wrote that without any advertising, 5,000 people signed up overnight. We have 13,000 people now, which is nice for a nice organization that's trying to do good. And it's created an overwhelming effect. The Minister of Religious Affairs said, someone posted a cell phone on Facebook. Thank you, if there was anyone here. He got 5,000 text messages overnight. His office was shut down with emails and faxes. And within 48 hours, he said to Tzahar, we'd like to sign a truce and resolve this by legislation. The result was that Tzahar was allowed and continued to help couples get married Jewishly. Our demand doubled. We have twice as many couples that want to get married through Tzahar. And finally, there's a Tzahar bill in the Knesset now to officially allow Tzahar and any other rabbinate in Israel to help couples regardless of where they live.
So you used media and social media.
Correct.
And social media was used in the protests. So I'd like to state for what we're understanding, social media, if you were in the social media, you'll understand why it works here, gets to people easily, free, and fast. And it can rally the masses, and that's what was used here. Devorah, you wanted to say something quickly?
In preparing for coming here, was thinking of what are the successes and what were the failures, and pointing the failures to the lack of attack on power. For example, the fact that all the people from all the different classes and races and ages were in the street does not mean that these divisions have disappeared. The divisions are there. There are still people who are poor. There are still people who are rich. There are still people who are old. You have an example before you, and there are still people who are too young to be able to act, not to mention color. So that's something that was just a surprise to centers of power. On the other hand, I think a great success was the collective identity that was put forward. I won't trouble you with the different kinds of identity there are, but this was an answer to Ha'ach HaGadol, I think. Instead of the playful identity, the willingness to be entertained and to stick to that, people came out to the streets with the idea of resistance and of having a project. But what happened to this? What happened to the project was, and we heard something of this when we heard Oren a little bit, when he introduced himself. The identity that was noised about was a legitimating identity, an identity where the 30% who work, who pay taxes, and who go to miluim, where the 30% who do everything that a citizen is required to do, has the duty to do, and that's why we have the right to be in the street. This is something that could only make power very happy, and I wrote this down as a great joy to power. The opportunities to affect diverse institutions were there, to affect local government and to affect different parties and so on. What happened was that mayors went out into the street. People came out into the street to identify with the demonstrators, but they were there as individuals. They weren't there as their institutions, and they weren't used as institutions. And I have something. There were round tables, which I think was a wonderful success. Round tables for discussing things. But the round tables, what came up in the round tables was not channeled to anything that was practical. The group set up committees to prepare programs. That had an effect on government. The Trachtenberg Committee was an outcome of those committees, but what happened to those committees? The experts who lent their names to the committees didn't really do the job. In order to do a job, it takes time, as Barak said before. It takes time, it takes expertise, it takes a lot of work. With all due respect to a philosopher of education can't come up with a program of how to correct education. So as a result, when the Trachtenberg Committee publicized its results, the people from the demonstration, the leaders of the demonstration, objected and said it was no good. But the only thing they could say were generalities, because the committees that they had set up with a lot of hype couldn't do the work in that time, and that's certainly understandable. Specific examples. The cottage cheese was a temporary success. I won't go into details, we all know that. A general success was the baby carriage demonstration, where as a result of that, the government decided to set up nursery schools for 0 to 3-year-olds. But what's happening? What was demanded was that the Ministry of Education should oversee these things. Nothing was said and nothing could be said in this time. I'm not accusing the people who led the
So we're talking about proper follow-up. We're talking about actually follow through with the actions that we're doing, and I think that's very important as a lesson.
Just let me complete it with two sentences. There's a lot of criticism about the Ministry of Education, about the way education is carried out in this country, from every different point of view that you can think of. Nothing of that is coming into the setting up of the nursery schools, the general nursery schools. They're going to be more of the same, with new kindergarten teachers or nursery school teachers who are getting a 6 weeks hishtalmut. They're being educated for 6 weeks, and this is going to create new problems for the children who go into those kindergartens. I would like to sum up, but I'll do that later.
Dvora, as I heard your things outside also, I must say that in a way, you serve the power in what you say, and I must say that I'm for criticism, but I think that the thing that we said about regarding the Trachtenberg Committee was something revolutionist. We said to the Trachtenberg, we said to this young professor, to this nice professor, we told them, and that's important about messages, and it's also connected to non-profit, because it's talking about also, no, it was in the previous thing, about calling the action and convince people. We said we are the power. We said to Netanyahu, and we said to Trachtenberg, you are a nice professor, but resign. We have no power for more committees. In this government, we had 20 committees. We are used to those kinds of committees and buries those things. Look what happened. In 1.5 months, during August and September, all the ministers of the government, the prime minister was actually, Bafoal, Professor Trachtenberg. All the ministers say, okay, we are waiting for Trachtenberg. It was kind of a glulat shena to the protest, and we say something that is revolutionary. We say resign. We don't want one more sentence. We resign because we want the government to act, and if not, we are the people, and we are the power. And I think that the best thing that calling people to action, and we are saying it for a few months, and some of the mistakes from the summer, is to tell the people, okay, you don't have to wait for those committees. You don't have to wait for those things. And when Israel Katz, the Minister of Transportation, came to the tents, I told him, and I was shouting at him in a way, he said, I'm honoring you of coming here. And I told him, you are honoring me? Listen, you have to work for me. You have to serve the civilians.
Sorry, we really have to.
But it's an important point about the message. But
thank you.
Okay.
Barak, you want to?
Just one sentence.
Please.
I'm in love with that woman. I can sign everything she said, and resistance need to be more as in the way she.
So she's your next leader of the social justice movement. Sarah, would you like to finish up?
Yeah, I just want to ask everybody who's in the audience, how many people have watched the show Mad Men?
Wow.
So if you don't know Mad Men, it's a show all about advertising and messaging. And the most interesting part of the show is that the main character, the protagonist himself, has created a whole life, which is a story. It's not his real life. But why he's so compelling is because within everything that he goes through and what goes through in the series, and every product that he works on and everyone who he works with, he finds some kernel of truth that everybody can connect with. Something that will flip everything just a little bit on its head and make people go, whoa, what was that? Who is that? I don't know what just happened here. I think the summer, the protest, when we're talking about call to action, I think there was that experience of everybody going, whoa, what happened? I thought I understood how Israel worked. Maybe I don't. Maybe I need to know more, and maybe I need to get more involved. And I think that when everybody is creating their message, they have to think about how they're going to grab somebody's attention and how they're going to make their nonprofit relatable to somebody who maybe doesn't know their story or doesn't understand, or maybe they've heard it 100,000 times, and they need to make their story different enough that they'll feel like their eyes were opened to something new.
I think that's Sarah said it better than I could have said it. You have to be relevant, you have to know your audience, you have to have a unifying message, and use the correct media. And with that, please, this is 40 seconds, and I hope that you enjoy it. One of our nonprofits put this together, and I think it speaks to everyone. One of our social Justice Amutot did this.
אני מתחייב לא לדון אף אדם
מתחייבת לא
על פי
לדון
מראה.
אף אדם על פי מראהו, לבושו או השתייכותו לחברה מסוימת.
אזהר שלא לעשות הכללות.
ואני אשתדל תמיד
לראות את האדם שמאחורי החזות החיצונית.
אדון כל אדם לכף זכות. להשתדל תמיד
לראות את הטוב שבכל אדם.
ולהאיר כל נקודה טובה.
בואו ניצור מציאות ישראלית חדשה.
מציאות של סובלנות.
אחווה ונכונות.
ביחד אנחנו יכולים.
לאפשר.
I want to tell you, I'm from Beit Shemesh. I know that we had some Beit Shemeshes before here. This was in direct response to another movement that was very moving in the media and brought 3,000 people to the streets of Beit Shemesh. I know you know Naama Margalis, the little girl in the end of the video. She was spit upon by a psychopath, and it really moved the people. They came out and they said, this is unacceptable. And in response, there was a movement against Haredim, and then there was a response of the Haredim against the secular, and it was becoming a nightmare. And one organization said, you know what, we have to do something counter, and this is what they came up with. And in the first 48 hours, there were 2,000 hits on YouTube, and all I did was put it up on Facebook, on my Facebook. So I'm just saying you can come up with a great message, get your point across, and get it out to the people. Thank you.